Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. This is going to be a recent reads video, a video in which I discuss the three most recent titles that I have completed reading. For a little bit of context, I finished up reading a series of books about ancient Chinese archaeology. And one of the books then that I read was titled Writing and Authority in Early China by Mark Edward Lewis, which gave me for the first time in my life kind of a comprehensive overview of some of the works that make up the classic Chinese literature. Now, I had a number of volumes on my shelf for over a couple of decades, which I picked up in China. It was never so easy to figure things out back then, but I saw these whilst traveling in Beijing and Shanghai, and every bookstore where I found such a volume, I picked it up at great difficulty lugging it back home. They were not everywhere. It is not as things are today where you can just find things. So this is one of the books which I read. Since reading the Mark Edward Lewis book, I have embarked upon a side project of reading the ancient Chinese philosophers. So the last recent reads video will tell you the volumes just previous to this, which I read. I have a playlist, and I will put a link to the playlist in the description box to this video. So this volume, this is a seminal Taoist text, Taoist as it used to be, spelled. I think now some folks prefer to use a D. In with the Pinyin transliteration mode, which I don't particularly care for, but I also don't feel like going against the wave. So there are 8 chapters here. It's very slight. A volume such as this with 8 chapters was known to exist in antiquity, but it was lost, and then somehow this appeared. I think the introduction actually refers to it as a counterfeit. I followed this with the Mencius, and then the most recent that I finished was Chuang Tzu. I pardon my lack of pronouncing these names correctly in Chinese. I don't really know what they should be. At any rate, these 2 books are very similar. They're just compendiums or anthologies of stories. There is indeed some duplication of the stories in both of these books. And neither of them really warmed the cockles of my heart. There are a couple of stories in this one that I knew from when very young. I took a course by a famous local teacher here named Bill Hill, titled On Death and Dying, and we had some anthologies of material about death and dying, and there were a couple of stories in here. Some of the more famous Chuang Tzu stories, the one about with the butterfly, I'm sure you can Google it, and then the other one about the turtle wriggling through the mud. The only other story that I picked up from this that I really enjoyed was the butcher. So most of us in the US right now tend to be meat eaters, but we don't like to talk about butchers. But Chuang Tzu did not shy away from it, and he presents the figure of a butcher who talks about his practice. He has been a butcher for 18 years, and his knife never gets dull because he knows what he's doing pretty well. And so when when he slices, he cuts in between things, into the interstices so he's not hacking away at bone, that kind of thing. And so his knife never needs sharpening, which it's a metaphor that I really enjoyed. There are other stories in here that I liked, and in the whoops, wrong book, and in the notes feature of YouTube, I have reproduced some of those here and there. But of this book, of the 8 chapters, probably the last 2 appealed to me the most. The 7th being hovering upon the theme of sensuality, which I always find an interesting theme to hover upon. So, Mencius, I'm glad that I have undertaken the project of reading these books in the proper sequence. So I reread recently the Analects by Confucius. Mencius comes later. He is the second Chinese philosopher to have this Latinate name, I guess. I'm not sure how you say that. But after having read this one, which, as I say, I didn't particularly love. It's translated by Martin Palmer, I think, in kind of a very colloquial way, very easy to read. But this has completely escaped me. I remember nothing of this. This is translated by D.C. Lau, who has translated others in the Penguin series. And I think, for one thing, Confucian thought just is not where my cup of tea lies. I recall liking this much better than the Analects, which was a reread for me. I think were I to read this again, and it's quite conceivable that I would choose a different translator to D.C. Lau. I'd just like to see perhaps something from one of the something a little more scholarly from one of the university presses, if such a thing exists. That said, the book that I am on now is the third of the great Confucian philosophers. So Xunxi, I guess, I don't know how you say his name either. And so far, he is the bomb. He is the best of the 3. I don't really like the figure of Confucius from the Analects. And as I say, I remember liking Mencius, but he does not grip me the way Master Mo did. I retain an awful lot from Master Mo. And at this point, I am willing to attribute that to the translator. I read also the Tao Te Ching in the D.C. Lau translation, which I found inferior to my favorite translation of the Tao Te Ching. And so any retention that I have of that book still remains the older retention from that older, or from that other translation, older to me. So, as I say, were I to read this again, I would go for a different translator, and that may well be something I consider worthwhile to do. So after I finish this fellow, and I should mention, this is translated by somebody named Knoblock, Knoblock. I forget the first name, John maybe. So it's 2 volumes. These Library of Chinese Classics editions come trilingually. You've got the original Chinese, the modern day translation into Chinese as spoken today. and then the English. And so this just takes a translation from a 3-volume set that was printed by Stanford University Press. I wish I could have those 3 volumes because there is a lot of extra material that is not included here. I mean, as far as the critical apparatus, books in this series tend to be fairly sloppy or lazily put together. There is a good review of this exact volume at Amazon, which kind of goes into details about the faults of the text. So I wish I had the Stanford volumes, but as with most classic Chinese literature, if you want the translation, you're talking about $100 per volume, that kind of thing. So it's that's with academic titles across the board. So I wind up not being able to read the texts that I would like. But my man here says that poverty is not a bar to scholarship, or one must not let that be a bar to scholarship. So after I finish that, if indeed I finish that, and I'm liking it very much so far, then next up will be Han Feizi, which I don't know anything about. He's a legalist, sounds very unappealing. This chap is described as authoritarian, but so far I have not found that. Han Feizi I only have in a selected translation by Burton Watson, so I don't have anything complete. And then I picked up this. This is actually an older philosopher. I didn't know anything about Guanzi, and wish that I had. This is published by Princeton University Press, and as far as the scholarship behind Princeton University Press titles, it is impeccable. But as a publishing house, from a business angle, Princeton has always been a bit unscrupulous. I had an encounter with them some 30 years ago, but I won't go into that. But they have marketed this title a bit deceptively because it is the second volume of 2, and they make no mention of that. I bought this, it came from the Brattle Bookshop in Boston at more of a price than I would like to pay, but I thought, well, since I've never heard of this philosopher and I am on this philosophy kick, I should get it, and was much aghast to discover that it is only volume 2, and volume 1 appears not to be available anywhere. I found one vendor selling it in South Korea, and they tell me that they will not ship internationally. So if I must, I will just read volume 2 of this, but I would like to have volume 1 and 2. This, again, is an older work that I didn't know about, and it's as much of the older philosophy texts of China are an anthology, sort of a compendium of various different essays written by different hands. So that is where I am going. I will leave off here. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.